These windows didn't have screens on them. The patients used to take their clothes off and throw it out the window. But when I first started here at 15, the nurse administrator took me up to a tour of the building, and we got to the top floor. The screaming, the yelling, patients half dressed, and they were just wandering around, talking to themselves, some of them hitting themselves. I was stuck in this building for that snowstorm.
What year was that?
78. Well, I worked with some patients that I scratched my head all the time, like, why is this person here? The diagnoses were things like imbecile, idiot, melancholia was depression. So at that time in the 80s, the state was very big on deinstitutionalization. She was admitted when she was 17. I discharged her at age 70. I told you, my office was right up here. My desk was over here with my phone. You'd be in the medication room and you'd prepare all the medicine on a cart. The patients, when they got upset, they'd punch these windows out with their bare hands. I watched the Challenger blow up in this room. It was crazy. We had patients on that ward. We had patients as young as 20, 21, all the way up to 85 years old.
The talks of the hospital closing, like the fear of people losing their jobs, was that a thing?
Oh, you have no idea.
What is going on, guys? I'm here at Kings Park Psychiatric Center to do a new video. I'm actually going to interview my friend Ralph, who worked at Kings Park for 20 years. He started out as a clerk in the clothing room, became a therapy aide, and then later a social worker working in case management as patients were being discharged just before the hospital closed. I learned of Ralph's story through his YouTube channel, which I'll share the link below, and he shares a lot of his experiences working here over the years. But for two separate visits, we're gonna visit where he used to work, and he's going to share his experiences working at Kings Park. So with that, here we go. So now being here, does this bring back memories for you? Or?
A lot of memories.
Okay.
This was a beautiful, beautiful campus when it was open. I was unemployed. I was at the unemployment office with a friend of mine.
Okay.
Taking New York State Civil Service test for clerks.
Right.
And I thought, what the heck, I'll take it. And I scored very high on it. It was a very simple test.
Okay.
And I started getting letters from the hospitals, from Central Islip, Pilgrim, Kings Park.
Right.
So I got a letter to come in for an interview here at Kings Park. So I had a job in a warehouse. Anyway, I came for the interview.
Yeah.
It was in Macy Home, which is down that way.
Right.
And just hired me, just like, when can you start? Can you start? Yeah, I was like, okay. So it was more money than what I was making. Yeah. I always wanted to work with people, though. That was a given. I was going to be a teacher. It's a long story. But I started working here as a clerk, in the clothing room, which was in the basement. Yeah. These windows didn't have screens on them.
Okay.
The patients used to take their clothes off and throw it out the window. And there'd be these piles of clothes around the perimeter. And either I used to have to go out and pick them up, or they would have patients go out and pick them up. Oh boy.
Does it, seeing it now as opposed to like your first day back in 1975, you said you started?
Yeah, well, I used to come in the back. There's a parking area in the back.
Okay.
I used to come in the back. This office in here, the first office was the chief of service of the building. It's Dr. Moriano.
Okay.
And then to the left was the nurse administrator's building. And there was 6 wards in this building, 3 on each side. And building 15, when I started, had a reputation of having the most difficult patients in the hospital.
Okay, like difficult in what sense? Because
difficult in terms of their functioning. There was a top ward here. It was a male ward.
Right.
When I started, when I first started, well, I had to do a 2-week orientation, but when I first started here at 15, the nurse administrator took me up to a tour of the building, and we got to the top floor.
Yeah.
It was all male. The screaming, the yelling, patients half dressed, tearing off their clothes, the smell was just, And they were just wandering around, talking to themselves, some of them hitting themselves, some of them in the corner smoking cigarettes.
Right.
And the staff was all in the office. That there was like a glass window they could look out. You know, like they wouldn't, they would come out if there was a, but you know, so he brought me through there and I was like, I couldn't believe it.
So take me through your first day on the job.
Well, the first day I had to report to Mr. O'Neill in Macy Home.
Okay.
He sent me over to building 21, a more experienced clothing room clerk. And he's smoking and he says, now let me tell you something. There's only 2 ways you can get fired from this job. He says, punch your boss in the mouth and show up drunk. I said, I think I can manage to avoid those 2 things. And that was it.
Yeah.
So I stayed with him for 2 weeks. And then I got my permanent assignment, which was building 15.
Yeah.
And when I started here, there was a woman who was a clothing room clerk before me, but she had already left.
Mm-hmm.
And they just kind of like threw me in. And I can't remember them telling me specifics.
Right. It's like a trial by fire almost.
Yeah. I do remember the dirty linens would come down, the staff would bring it down, and these canvas things on wheels. They were like almost like a coal cart, you know?
Right.
And the smell from the, and I used to have to, you didn't wear rubber gloves back then. I used to have to count the dirty sheets out. Because if they brought down 30 dirty sheets, I had to give them 30 clean sheets. There was a barbershop here.
Yeah.
The occupational therapy room was down here. A man by the name of John Lombardi ran it. Wonderful, wonderful man.
Yeah.
He really helped me out. He really helped me to orient me to the whole state system and to the whole. Mm-hmm. And then the dining room was over here.
Look how they sealed the window. So those are actually lawnmower blades.
Oh, look at that! Holy shit! So, I just thought of something else that the therapy aides used to do. We used to have to assist sometimes with patients receiving shock treatment.
Is that something that you did?
Yeah.
What was that experience like?
Very strange and a little scary.
Okay.
Go into this room, there's a doctor and a nurse, and there's this like little black box with buttons on it. Mm-hmm. And of course they sedate the patient, but they still stuck something in their mouth so they wouldn't bite their tongue. And
so like a mouth guard.
Yeah. Because, and then as a therapy aide, you had to stand on the side of the table and hold either their leg or their arm, whatever. There was like 2 or 3 of us in there.
Right. And
you didn't the doctor would say, don't hold them down hard, because if they start to convulse, we don't want to have them break a bone or something. Mm-hmm. But you had to hold it so they didn't like pop off the table, like, you know.
Right.
And they'd take a tongue depressor and they'd put like a Vaseline material on each side of their,
right, to conduct the
charge. And then they look like headphones with cushions.
Yep.
And they'd put it on either side.
Yeah.
And once the patient was sedated, he'd press the button, and depending on how many shocks they were supposed to get, that's how many they did. And we had one patient, 21.
Yeah.
She was the patient I mentioned. Her name was Kathy, and she murdered her mother. She was a young girl. She was in her mid to late 20s, maybe.
Right.
And I remember assisting they had to take her down. She was receiving shock treatments. Mm-hmm. I also worked with old-time patients that had lobotomies. You could see the scars on their forehead.
Yeah.
And it was in their history that they had a lobotomy. Kings Park was responsible for Suffolk County. So anybody who lived in Suffolk County who needed inpatient psychiatric care would come here.
Okay.
Okay. And obviously you'd be evaluated.
Right.
And you'd be seen by the team and whatever. And after 30, 60 days, if you didn't begin to show some progress or for whatever reason why you came in,
right,
you were transferred to a back unit. You'd be transferred to 93,
okay,
or you'd be transferred to 15,
right,
or group 4, and that sometimes for patients could be the black hole.
Right.
if you understand what I'm saying. It's like difficult because back then, I mean, in a way I hate to say this, but the staff was just as resistant as letting patients be discharged than the patient themselves lots of times. It was job security. They used to have an expression here, you know the devil you got, you don't know the devil you're gonna get. So if they had a nice stable ward with patients they knew.
Yeah.
See, this was,
Yeah.
there was all parking spaces here.
Yeah.
All around like this. In fact, I was stuck in this building for that snowstorm that I mentioned in my channel.
What year was that?
78.
Okay.
And I'm telling you, it was the worst storm I can remember. And when I came out of here,
Yeah.
2 or 3 days later, my car was parked right there.
Yeah.
And I couldn't start it, and I opened up the hood, and the entire engine was just covered with snow from underneath.
Wow.
And my friend Richie, who worked here at the time, and he lived in Kings Park, he had to help me out, and we jumped it, and we got it going, and I was able to get home. Oh, geez. You know, this.
Is it kind of sad to see it like this?
Yeah,
or?
you know, these grounds were kind of, you know, they were immaculately kept. They really were kept well. I mean, you know, they were constantly grounds people mowing the, you know, everything. And this was another one of those fairly new buildings from the 60s.
Sure.
So as you can tell, the brick is different than the, you know, than 93 and 15. They used to call this central, or they used to call it the center, because that's where the nurse administrator's offices would be off the center, they called it. There'd be probably a door to the office over here or something. Because I don't remember it like this. That's why it's weird. I'm picturing in my mind.
Yeah.
So you see that window up there with the casing of the, that was probably a doctor's office.
Oh,
the only offices I remember that had air conditioning were the doctor's offices. And
so how hot would they get on a day like today?
Oh, today is not so bad because it's cool, but in the summer when there's a heat wave, as I say in my video, these buildings, they took a long time to heat up because they're brick.
Okay.
So in the beginning of the summer, you would walk in, it felt like air conditioning almost.
Yeah.
The building stayed cool. It was like walking into a basement of a house, like in your home.
Yeah.
But then once they heated up, all they had were these oscillating fans mounted to the wall.
Right.
And they'd be going, like, you know, when it's 95 degrees for 5 days straight or something, it's not doing it. I don't know how more patients didn't die from heat stroke and stuff. And
well, surely AC was invented by the time that you started working here. It was just more of a.
It was like a luxury back then. Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
When you would go order a new car back in my day, air conditioning was an option. And it was an expensive option that you had to pay an extra $600 or $700 for.
Wow.
Well, at the time, maybe it was $400. Yeah.
Okay.
The very first new car I bought had no air conditioning. I couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
And
what was your first car?
My first new car was a 1979 Pontiac Sunbird.
Okay.
And I bought it here in Smithtown at the Smithtown dealer because I worked here and everything was, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's the breezeway, huh?
Yeah.
See, I got the shrubbery and everything is a little disorienting.
It's a little, I know, yeah.
Yeah, this is 22.
This is 22.
This is the back of 22.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was, I was on the ground floor. That was the therapy aide assignment I had before I became a case manager. Back when I was a therapy aide, the uses of camisoles, you would know it as a straitjacket.
Okay.
Okay, they called them camisoles. And
Sure.
you know, the patient was like this.
Yeah.
And it was laced up in the back. And you had to lace it in such a way that it had a bow, so if you had to get the patient out in an emergency, you just had to pull a string and the thing would, you know.
Yeah.
But when that patient required double restraint, you tied them down to a bed
Yeah.
in a camisole, and you put a canvas sheet over them. And every foot, there was like these holes with metal around them, and you used to put like, almost like a rope. It wasn't rope though, it was like canvas strips, and you tie the person down, they'd be face up.
Yeah.
And I saw a patient rip out of that one time. Oh my God, I never saw anything like it. She brought her knees up to her chest. Somehow she got her feet like this underneath the sheet, and she pushed up, and we could hear this was heavy canvas. I'm not talking about a sheet, like a linen sheet.
Yeah.
And it's going, and the staff with her in the corner, like
Yeah.
it was like watching the Incredible Hulk come to life.
Wow. What can you tell me about the ease in which people were instituted back in the day?
Well, I worked with some patients that I scratched my head all the time, like, why is this person here? Patients would be brought here by family members because they were difficult to deal with for whatever reason.
Right.
Either they were mentally ill or they were just difficult to deal with. And they would sign them in. No value, they sign them in.
Right.
And they stay here for decades, for their whole life. I had patients here that they hadn't seen their families in 30 years, sometimes longer. A Sunday when it was visiting, you'd very rarely get a visitor. Usually your visitors were for people who were recently admitted. I used to go read their old records, from the 30s and stuff when they were admitted.
Yeah.
And back then, the diagnoses were things like imbecile, idiot, melancholia was depression. And you could read between the lines.
Sure.
You're reading the psychiatric assessment. Family reports that she only has female friends. There was a lot of that. Only female friends, doesn't socialize, age 25, no interest in men, no boyfriend. This was back in the times when people got married, I guess, at 21.
Right.
And, I read between the lines. I said,
So that was seen as like a form of mental illness back then?
Yeah, homosexuality, oh yeah, sure.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There was patients here that had advanced stages of alcoholism, so the advanced stages of syphilis. So their brains were, I had a guy I used to play checkers with in building 15.
Yeah.
He was a bad alcoholic, supposedly. And he was really not, had a lot of his faculties, but by God, I could never beat him at checkers.
So this is 3 buildings, 41, 42, and 43.
Yeah, I worked in 41. I was a social worker. I got my master's degree in 1983 from Adelphi University, and I was a case manager at the time. And the director of social work knew that, and he contacted me and said, "Oh, could have a social work assistant position for you," which only required a bachelor's degree, but it's usually a step to the next level, which would be a master's level.
Right.
So he told me, first it was in building 43, he tells me. "You're interested?" I said, "Yeah, it would be a nice raise for me." And so I wasn't here a month or two, and I got a thing from personnel saying they're upgrading me to a social worker 1, which is a master's. It's the entry level for master's social workers in OMH. So I was like, oh, okay. So I stayed here.
Yeah. And what were your primary duties, responsibilities working in that capacity?
Well, I was assigned to 2 inpatient wards.
Yeah.
One was on the ground level here. It was an open, what we call an open ward.
Okay.
Because the door's unlocked during the day and it's open. So the patients can come and go as they please. It's only locked at night. But the other ward I had was really, those patients were so ill.
Yeah.
They would just scream out, and it was so much chaos when you walked onto that unit. And it was all female too. So anyway, your job was to run groups and to meet with families if there's any families left, which was like, forget it. And to try and discharge people. So at that time in the 80s, the state was very big on deinstitutionalization. I mean, that started in the late 60s, but it really heated up in the 70s and the 80s. So what we did was we started a community preparation program, me and another social worker, and it was on that open unit. We were starting to discharge patients. That's the ward I discharged somebody. She was here 53 years. She was admitted when she was 17. I discharged her at age 70 to an adult home in Baton.
Oh my God. So how does someone like that, so once she's discharged, how does she acclimate to society outside the hospital?
Well, that was one reason why we had this program, because it was like a group where we would take them out into trips in the community to see the various programs and stuff. And, you know, they all needed some level of supervision in their new residences. There's no way they could live independently. And I was very lucky with that discharge, because she was very good friends with another woman who was here for close to 40 years. And they wouldn't be discharged unless they would go together. And I had this adult home in Babylon that had 2 openings. And they were really nice. I explained the whole situation, and they were like, oh yeah, we could put them in the same room. You know, like, whoa.
Wow.
So anyway, that worked out beautifully. I told you my office was right up here. Now this was a big, that was like a day room area, the last window. And then the speech therapist was the first office coming out, and I think I was that one right there, the next one. I was next to, I forget her name. Her name was Kathy.
Okay.
She was the speech therapist, and I was right there. And then Sylvia, which was another social worker, was right there. That whole top floor was a ward, but it was vacant. It was the only people that were up there were offices for the social workers were up there. The social work supervisor was down there.
Yeah.
But there was no patients up there. We were not popular because of what we were doing.
Right.
You know, oh, we're gonna lose our jobs. You're discharging the patients. This woman, Mary, I just told you about, 53 years in the hospital. She was on no medication, no psychotropic medication, no medical medication. But she was like a 5th staff member. She would go down to the storage room, get supplies, bring them upstairs. The first time I went to a team meeting there, the woman I knew, Fran, who ran it, she hands Mary her keys, and I'm like, you never do that. You never hand your keys to a patient. That's like...
Right.
Mary comes back in, oh, Miss Fran, here's your keys. Because she went downstairs to get supplies, and she brought them back up. And I'm looking at Fran, and I'm like, really? And she's like... I saw staff literally try and sabotage patients who were getting ready for discharge.
Oh, wow.
You know, just giving them suggestions that would make them anxious.
Right.
Like, yeah, you're not going to make it. You know, stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh,
It was, you know, so a lot of these buildings and units, people stayed here for decades. I mean, people were just signed in here.
Yeah.
And that was it. Like, you know, they changed all that, of course. A doctor has to say that, you know, you're an imminent danger to yourself or others before they'll admit you against your will. Like I said, I had patients, and even at 21, that were here 30, 40 years. They hadn't seen a family member in 20, 25 years. Like I said, on a Sunday, which was usually visitors' day, out of a ward of 38, maybe you'd had 4 or 5 patients that were getting visitors. Everybody else got no visitors.
Oh, that's sad. That almost sounds like it would create the opposite, like of a healing or a therapeutic.
Yeah. Well, that was the knock on these hospitals. They were warehouses, human warehouses.
Right.
There was not really much therapy or treatment going on.
This is the 4th floor. This would be the kitchen.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd have to go down this hallway.
Yeah. It's a beautiful courtyard.
So that's
41.
That's 41 right there?
That's the one that's closest to Old Dock Road.
Okay.
So I think this was the dining room.
You know, like I said, when I worked up here, there was no patients here.
Oh, okay.
There were, I remember furniture being stacked up.
Yeah.
The psychologist's office was...
Right.
He was at the beginning of the hallway. You know where the elevator bank is? Do you know where that is?
Yeah. Yeah, that's where we're going right now.
Okay. Going up there, that's the roof.
Yeah, no, don't. So that's...
Okay.
That's the elevator.
All right.
Yeah.
That's the elevator.
Okay, so this is 4th floor.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. My supervisor. Look at this door.
So yeah, right out there would be Old Dock Road, and this was the corridor that we were looking at
Oh,
from
Yeah.
outside. Yeah.
Yep. Jesus. Okay, I was before this. This was the speech therapist's office. Actually, she had two offices. She was here and
Yeah.
here.
Okay.
Because one she would meet with patients and the other one was her office. Then there was me.
This is your office right here?
Yeah, Ginny was across from me. She was another social worker.
Yeah.
And Sylvia was over here. She was next to me. If I am mistaken, it's definitely either this one or that one.
How does it feel kind of being back here?
I feel like I'm dead. And I came back to life or something and I'm here. It feels weird. There's a lot of memories, you know. But basically this was all staffing, you know.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't remember the speech therapist's last name. Her first name was Kathy, though. And Sylvia Cooper was her name. She later went on to work at Sagamore. Oh my God, I still have the shade up. Now, there's that outlet. There would be a fan attached to that.
Right.
So let me just see the other office.
Do you think this could? Yeah, because I was gonna say like that. This is. I remember you said it was third from the left.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this would be 1, 2, and then 3.
This is 3.
Is this? Yeah.
Yeah, because this is set up more like an office. Yeah. Yeah, because look at there's the thing for a telephone. Came right down here. My desk was over here with my phone. And the fan was mounted. I don't know how they mounted it, but they did.
And look, the shade is still on the window.
Yeah, it's probably the shade I pulled down 1,000,000 times. This is also, I remember.
Yeah.
Unless that one had one and they tore it down, but I think this is set up like an office. Here's one of the brackets I did for the fan. Jesus.
So the last time you were here was 40 years ago in this room?
Yeah.
Give or take?
1988.
Yeah, probably 36 years ago.
36 years ago.
I'm 37 today.
Yeah. I went outpatient from here in either 88 or 89. It was in there. No later. I was here all through the mid 80s and yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. They really stripped this place, huh? The kids.
That's that scrappers, probably just after you probably moved on to Pilgrim or Creedmoor, that's when they probably came in and started.
Yeah. See how the heat rises up here?
Oh yeah, I mean I'm feeling it too.
It's like, what would happen is the person across the hall, they'd have their window open and you'd get this air draft, but the door sometimes would slam shut so loud, so you had to put something heavy to keep the door open so you got at least some sort of a breeze.
Right.
This is weird.
Really? Yeah.
I'm glad I came here.
Are you? Yeah.
In fact,
do you want a picture? Or?
I want to take a picture.
Yeah, sure.
Want you to take a picture of me?
Yeah. Tell me how you want to.
Yeah, these things would get so hot, and my back would be like here. In the wintertime sometimes, oh my God.
Were you able to like?
You couldn't
control it at all, or?
Yeah, they had a valve up here. See, okay. there it is, right there.
Yeah.
Where some of them you could shut off. You could turn the valve all the way, to the right, and it would shut off. And like I said in the YouTube video, they used to turn the heat on for the whole hospital, October 15th. Before then, there was no heat.
Right.
And you'd have chilly days at the beginning of October. And then they shut it off April 15th. And that was it.
So when you were here, did you have like certain things hanging on the walls?
Well, I used to,
Did you personalize it at all?
I just had memos up. I don't think I had any pictures or anything. I don't remember that. But I used to hang memos on here. You know, we'd get memos and telling us to do whatever, or sometimes the list of the holidays that the state observed and that kind of stuff.
Right.
I'm trying to remember if there was anything on this wall or not. Because these were concrete walls, you couldn't just hang something.
Right.
You had to put in a work order to maintenance, and they had to come over and drill something. And these were office keys. This wasn't the skeleton. Everybody had a different key to their office, of course. Mm-hmm. Yeah, here it is.
Oh yeah.
This is the bathroom. Toilet was right in here. Yep. Yep. Shut off the light. Yeah. Oh my God, look at this stuff growing out of the walls. Holy shit.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Look at that. It's a fern. Yeah, I used this bathroom many a time. Many a time.
Some of them actually still dispense soap.
Really?
Yeah. I found that just, kind of poking around here and there.
Wow.
But, what kind of room was this? Was this like a medication room?
It probably, when this was a ward. See, they had treatment rooms, and then they had a medication room, which sometimes was separate, which most of the time I think was separate.
Right.
So this could have been a treatment room. In other words, if the doctor wanted it, if the medical specialist, that's what they called the medical doctors, they called them medical specialists, that was their title. If they wanted to examine a patient or see a patient, they'd take him into the exam room, which this would be. There'd be a scale, there'd be other things,
Yeah.
If they had to address a patient's wound or something, yeah, there's a paper towel dispenser. Oh, God.
So there's actually, in 21, 22, there's actually still labels on the drawers in the cabinets.
Really?
There was one such label that I found that said Kool-Aid on it.
Yeah.
And so another therapy aide told me once that they used to give that to patients to help them take their medication.
Right.
Kool-Aid.
We used to get these big sacks, plastic sacks of Kool-Aid or powdered, and you had to mix it with a pitcher of water. And sometimes we'd run out. And the patients hated that because they had to take their medicine, which is water. And you had some patients on liquid medications. Like Thorazine came in liquid form, Prolixin came in liquid form. And especially the patients would complain about Thorazine liquid. It would burn going down, they said. But the juice made it, the Kool-Aid made it a little bit easier, palpable to. So yeah, they're right, whoever told you that.
Right.
That's what it was for.
Interesting.
You'd have to call the doctor if they outright refused, because then it, I felt really bad because some of the therapy aides were just, if you don't take your medicine, you're getting a shot. And that's really the doctor's call. That's not a therapy aide's call to say you're getting a shot.
Right.
But that's what they would do. And all right, most of them were pretty compliant. Most of them were. You'd be in the medication room and you'd prepare all the medicine on a cart, like a metal cart. They had all the cups lined up because in the cups was the patient's name and the medicine, the dosage, everything. And you'd open that door and you'd lean out towards the day hall and you'd go, medication! And the patients would then start to come like Pavlov's dogs. And like.
So 1988 was the last time you stepped foot in here.
Yeah. 1988. Could have been late 87, but.
Okay.
Because I went to Patchogue.
It's the year I was born. not rubbing it in, but just,
My son was born in 91.
Oh,
Shut up. The patients, when they got upset, they'd punch these windows out with their bare hands. Oh my God, the blood. And you'd be in a side room, and all of a sudden you'd hear, yeah.
Wow. How often did something like that happen?
On some wards, it happened every day.
Jesus.
We in building when I was in 21.
Yeah.
In the dead middle of winter, if a patient punched out a whole row of them, it would take sometimes several days for maintenance to come up and repair the windows, and we'd have that cold air coming in. And a lot of times they did it in the bathroom because you didn't follow them into the bed. Unless somebody was on like what they call the 1-to-1, which means they were on like a suicide watch. But
oh, okay.
some patients their hands were just You know how many patients I had to hold down while the doctor stitched them?
Yeah.
Because they stitched them right here. They didn't send them out to a hospital or nothing.
Right.
And half the time it was a psychiatrist doing the stitching, you know? Like, I mean, they had training, I guess, from when they were in med school, but,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
it was just, it was,
Were you ever part of a psychological autopsy?
yes,
So what is that to
Plenty of
someone who
times.
doesn't know
plenty of times.
what that is?
They do it if there's a suicide or if there's a serious suicide attempt. And that really what they do is they get the chart, they invite either the head of psychology heads it, and the whole team is there, usually the doctor, the social worker, the psychologist, and they invite like a doctor from another building or another unit or another outpatient clinic to attend it. They want somebody who's objective to the case. And then the case is presented either by the therapist or the doctor. And the purpose of it is to learn from it. What did we miss? So that's what it's for. And then they write up a report. You know, they write up like, I don't know, 4 or 5 page report.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the patient's name, diagnosis, the medications they were on. Mm-hmm. But it's supposedly to learn. But many times it turned into a blame session. There was a guy who I had that he put himself in front of a train. He was 28 years old.
Wow.
And I remember the guy's name and everything. And so we had the autopsy. And this guy, he was in Kings Park for like 6 months. Before he went into Kings Park, he had his own apartment. He had 2 jobs. He had a life. He got manic. And he ended up in Kings Park. Well, in those times, they kept him here for 6 months. And over 6 months, he lost his job.
Right.
He lost his apartment. Thank God his brother was able to get his stuff out of his apartment. So anyway, they end up discharging him to a single room occupancy in Patchogue, the Smithport Hotel, which is not even there anymore. Jeez. And he was on welfare. And he was a worker. He was embarrassed. He said he used to ride his bicycle to the clinic because he wouldn't call the Medicaid taxi cab. He didn't want to take handouts. That was his attitude. So one day he comes in with a letter from Social Security saying they approved him for Social Security disability, which is like a gift. Because when you're on disability, first of all, the amount that they give you is like 2 or 3 times what welfare will give you. You only have to be evaluated once a year, not every 3 months. On welfare, you have to go down and be recertified. It's a whole big. So I said, Tom, that was his name, this is good news. He's like, no, it's not. They're telling me I can't work. I said, well, Tom, I said, right now, you got to get on your feet, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I tried to get him to come in more often, but he wouldn't. I brought him down to see the doctor. The doctor saw him, prescribed his meds, whatever, and let him go. And then first day of my vacation on a Monday, the team leader from Patchogue calls me and says, Ralph, I don't want you to hear this on the news because it's probably going to be on Channel 12. He said, he told me what happened, because he threw himself in front of the train near the Patchogue train station.
Oh, man.
So, so anyway, they were trying to, when they were going through the autopsy, they're trying to, well, why didn't you do this? And why didn't you strongly, what do you call it? Why didn't you urge him more strongly to come to the, and finally, thank God, the psychiatrist, who was a great guy, he spoke up for me. He said, Mr. Lombardi, he did everything he possibly could.
When you were back in this building in the 80s, did you ever imagine that this is what it would become?
No, oh God. John, that would be the furthest thing from my mind. If there was time travel and I came into the future, I'd be like flabbergasted. I mean, I guess I wouldn't have been surprised that that they closed the hospital, because there was always talk of that. We always used to hear talk, they're closing us. Oh, did you hear they're closing us? And then we heard they're closing Central Islip. They were supposed to close Central Islip before Kings Park.
Right. Yeah.
But, no, I wouldn't have imagined it. I wouldn't have, like I said, the staff, they were resistant. To them, the patients that were here for decades was job security. That's the way they looked at it. It's job security. Because you used to get a bum rap, like I used to overhear, staff saying, you're taking our jobs. Who do taking your jobs? these people belong in the community, or, you know, whatever, this person shouldn't be here. Or whatever. Yeah, we got a lot of flack for that, a lot of flack. And we were always in the minority in terms of in the old days, in terms of we were the minority, the staff that really wanted to get patients out and work to get them out and all that stuff. And
so being like a case manager, social worker, you were seen as like the kind of the outsider, like
kind of like the enemy. I hate to say it. Wow. What do you mean they're not ready to go? What do they do? Every single day they're in here watching TV.
Yeah.
You know,
like it was almost.
I see them playing. I see them putting puzzles together. I see them playing cards. You know, when was the last time this person got an injection because they were agitated? It'd be like, you know, 10 years ago or something. You know, crazy. It's like.
I think this was this was a kitchen, or sorry, this was a dining room.
Dining room, right?
So the kitchen was right there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Oh. So did you, like, working here, were you able to have like free meals and stuff, or?
No.
Oh, really?
Free meals?
Like, were you able to just like grab a tray and?
No.
You know?
But I got to tell you, I work with some staff. They got free meals. I worked with one woman. This was in 21. This is in the late 70s.
Okay.
Every single morning, she'd go down to she knew the dining room staff. They knew us, you know, and they'd give her a tray, and she'd walk it back to the employee, you know.
So that wasn't allowed?
Technically, no. I mean, sometimes the dining room gave us leftover stuff. What I mean by that is they'd hand you a loaf of white bread or something. So they'd give us stuff like that, you know, like, here, we're just going to throw this out anyway, or, you know.
I almost wonder, would that be because, with the meals, because it's all funded by the state, so there was a certain amount allocated to patients, so that's why they, you know.
Yeah, it was considered, I guess technically it was considered theft, if you will.
Oh, wow, okay.
But a lot of employees felt entitled. The Office of Mental Health, when I started working for them, was called the Department of Mental Hygiene.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which sounds kind of like weird, like, you know, clean mind. Is that what they're talking? You know, like, so they changed it to the Office of Mental Health. You know, I mean, different things like that. I mean, I used to look at some of these old histories, especially from patients in this building. Why was this person admitted? Because there would be reason for admission. You'd start reading, and it would be all like bullshit stuff, like patient stays to themselves, has no friends. Patient's a 23-year-old woman that she doesn't have a job, and you know, this was the times when, you know, women got married right out of school. Mm-hmm. And I had a couple of patients in 21. They were artists. Mm-hmm. They were really good artists too. But back when they were, like in the 30s, you know, women, you were a bookkeeper, a nurse, or a teacher. That was it. You know, if your family didn't like some of your thinking or whatever, push you to a state hospital, how'd you sign in? That's not normal. It's not normal that she's not married by 23, by 20. I mean, I'm not kidding you.
Yeah.
I read a lot of histories like that, you know. Yeah.
Wow. That blows my mind. It's like these in which you could commit someone.
Well, that's, you know, like.
And that's why, like, these hospitals were so overcrowded too.
Right.
People that just didn't need to be here.
Exactly. You know, and sometimes, God forbid, I remember in 21 we had this young girl, and we discharged her. She was like 25 years old, and she just, I remember her name too. Well, her first name was Ariel.
Okay.
But we discharged her to an aunt or something in Brooklyn or something, because now this is 1978, 77, 78?
Right.
Well, in those days, if you discharged the patient and they had to return in 30 days, they came right back to the hospital. And usually they went back to the ward that they were on. And she came back, and I can remember some staff saying, "I knew you wouldn't make it," you know, like, yeah, stuff like that. You know,
oh, Jesus.
She was discharged again, and she made it. She needed a couple of go-arounds, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Because she came from the children's unit. It was crazy. We had patients on that ward. We had patients as young as 20, 21, all the way up to 85 years old, all together.
Really?
Yes.
And
we had little old ladies that would sit and watch TV every day and not get up from their seat unless they had to go to the bathroom or go to the dining room.
Wow.
And then we had these young, like the people I told you about, busting windows and doing all sorts of crazy shit, having fights. I used to walk down this hallway when I came in, because one of the first things I'd do, I'd sign in, go up to my office, put my coat away, blah, blah, blah. I'd take the elevator down to the first floor, And I'd walk through yes, this is it. I'd walk through the day hall because they had a little canteen. They had patients selling buttered rolls, some candy bars. That was sort of like an illegal thing.
Yeah.
We weren't supposed to do that. But Fran, who was the ward manager, she was the original ward manager when I was a therapy aide in 21.
Yeah.
So when I went on this unit as a social worker and we saw each other, it was like, unfortunately the poor woman passed away, but she had a heart of gold, but she was tough as nails.
Yeah.
Tough as nails. The patients really respected her.
Yeah, yeah.
What they would do is from the money that they would make off the canteen, she'd put it to the unit to have parties, to buy decorations.
Oh, that's cool.
When I was a therapy aide underneath her, our ward was the most decorated ward in the hospital. See, in a ward that wasn't an open ward, that door would be locked all the time, but it was open all the time. So the patients the dormitory was kept locked.
Right.
Because they didn't want them to go down and lay down and go to bed and go to sleep in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
And, but it was all, and that door was open too. It was open just like that. These patients were institutionalized. I mean, just like, Pavlov's dog type thing. I mean, if they were told not to do something and they were women in their 60s and 70s, they followed what they were supposed to do.
Yeah.
They just did. I watched the Challenger blow up in this room.
What?
Yeah. When was that? 1988?
I think it may have been 89. 88, 89.
Yeah, it was in the winter. It was in January of 89, I think, or 88. I don't know, but I remember standing here. They had a TV. Look, there's the outlet. Because they used to have the TVs on the wall because if they put it on a table, they would bolt it down because the patients, when they got agitated, but this was an open ward, so they may have had it down on the table, but this is where it was.
Wow, so you watched the Challenger disaster right here.
Yeah, this is.
Seeing the building now, being inside it, what does that tell you, like, where we're going?
Hopefully we're going in the right direction, but
yeah,
there's a lot of controversy about that too. This was the extreme in terms of the warehousing of people. They just were warehoused here. I mean, they got medications and they got some activity therapy and all that other stuff. But like I said, people were brought here and kept here for decades, and they didn't have to be. And then you got the other extreme, which is where we are now, which is like you have patients that can be violent and everything. They get admitted to a hospital and they stay like 4 or 5 days, and they they tell the doctor, oh, I'm feeling okay, and they let them out, and they come. Then it's a revolving door, they call it. There are places for long-term type treatment, but humane treatment, though. But I've been out of the loop. There's so many new medications.
Right.
That was another big impetus behind deinstitutionalization, the new medications. Patients could function on these medications. They could, and science was changing in terms of these patients. They were all lumped together. If you were alcoholic, if you were autistic, if you were developmentally disabled, if you were schizophrenic, you went to a state hospital. Like they didn't open up children's hospitals until the mid-70s.
Wow. So
they had a kids unit here. And then when the kid hit 18, they got transferred to a building like this.
All right. So 30 plus years working in mental health, 20 of which were at Kings Park. What's something you've learned? What's something you've taken away?
Oh boy.
From your time?
Patience and understanding other people. You really have to, everybody's got their own private hell, and unfortunately these people who were here had a private hell with a capital H. I'm just thankful for my life, for what it's been, for what,
Yeah.
I mean, I think sometimes of patients that were here for 30, 40, 50 years, never married, never had a family, never had a career or anything.
Right.
And you're only on this planet that I know of one time, and you think to yourself how fortunate you are that that you have your wits about you, your faculties, like physical and mental.
Right.
And thank you for asking that question, because sometimes I forget that, and being here just makes me thankful.
Oh, last question I wanted to ask you. With the hospital closing, the talks of the hospital closing, like the fear of people losing their jobs, was that a thing?
Oh, you have no idea.
Really? So when did that start about?
That started, I'm gotta tell you, almost the first few years I started working here.
Wow, back in the 70s.
You'd hear people saying, "Did you hear they're closing us?"
Right.
They're closing Kings Park.
Well, that was after Willowbrook.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. That's exactly it.
Okay.
And there was a lot of hubbub about it. And then every year we would hear that. And then another oil embargo hit at the end of the 70s. And there was talk of them closing Central Islip. Mm-hmm. And this is what I heard.
Yeah.
Central Islip was heated with fuel oil.
Okay.
Where Kings Park was heated with coal. And it was cheaper for them to keep Kings Park open.
Right. Interesting.
So there was talk of closing Central Islip. That's why when Kings Park closed,
right,
when they announced it, it was like kind of people were like, "Oh, I thought Central Islip was on the chopping block," and they merged us all with Pilgrim. There was a big hubbub here, I think, worse than Central Islip, because Kings Park was so attached to this hospital.
Right.
The roots ran really deep
into the community. Yeah.
Really deep. I think deeper than now. Maybe somebody from Central Islip will refute that. I don't know, but I just know that was the case.
Well, this was a fun. Thank you for taking the time to just walk around,
welcome, John.
this was made very insightful, and it's just nice to hear another side of what it was like to work here.
It's my side, anyway.
Yeah.
You may interview somebody else and tell you, know, something different, but it's your experience. So
yeah.
I think overall I was fortunate. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I worked with good people, and
yeah.
I mean, like anything else, you have your ups and your downs, but you get through it.
Yeah. Oh, great. All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.